Hello friends, this is the second lesson about relationships. So in this lesson we're going to take a look at two other kinds of relationships, one-to-one and many-to-many. But these two do not exist in the to-do list application database that we have created and we have been working on so far. However, we are going to add more tables and we're going to see examples of these kind of relationships inside of our database. First, we're going to focus on a one-to-one relationship. A one-to-one relationship between two tables exists when a particular record exists in one table and it can have only one associated record in another table. Let's just take a look at a couple of examples and I think you will get the idea of one-to-one relationship quickly. The first example we might consider is a car related to drivers. A car only has one driver at any given time, and likewise, a driver is only the driver of one car at a time. Like in this example, Talha can drive at any given time only one of these two cars, Audi or Toyota. The same for Marco. Marco cannot drive two cars at any given time in parallel. So we can see one-to-one relationship here. Now to connect these two tables, we are going to use a foreign key. Here you can see car_ID column in driver table. So this column references to ID of car table. The first row you can see Tala and the car that he is going to drive is the car with ID 2 and it is Toyota. In the second row we see 1 and it references to the car with ID 1 that is Audi. The difference here from one to many or many to one relationship that we saw is the car ID is unique. Or another example was capitals and countries. Maybe there are exceptions, but as far as I'm aware, there are no capitals or cities in the world that serve as the capital for many different countries at the same time. So we would say that a capital has one country and a country has one capital. Here we have two capitals in the table capital, Dushanbe and Rome. Dushanbe is the capital of Tajikistan. It cannot be the capital of Tajikistan and Italy at the same time. Or the same thing for Tajikistan, for the country. Tajikistan can have one country and it is Dushanbe. So again, one-to-one relationship. The same for Italy and Rome. I think you are getting the idea. These two were some very simple examples of one-to-one relationship, and now about our database and the implementation of one-to-one relationship in the world of Postgres. Say we want to show on the main page the number of completed and uncompleted tasks of a specific user. And we want to show it like, for example, on this mockup. Whenever a user adds a task, based on the state of the task, these numbers are going to change. About updating these automatically we will talk in the future lessons, but for now just focus on how we're going to implement this new feature. I mean, how we're going to store this data in our database. Here we said we're going to show the number of completed or uncompleted tasks of the user that logged into the application. Let me give you an example. The user Astrid has 3 tasks, and for now the state of all of them is uncompleted, because by default the state of any task we set uncompleted. That's why here we have 3 out of 3 tasks uncompleted. Whenever we complete this first task, the cards will be 1 out of 3 completed, 2 out of 3 uncompleted. I think you got the idea, and we can start thinking about how to store this data. Here I would propose to create a new table and call it user task stat. Because here we are kind of talking about task statistics, and this new table is gonna have an ID that is primary key, because we said every single table we ever make is going to have a primary key. We're gonna add 2 more columns, completed total, uncompleted total. In the completed total, we are gonna store the total number of completed tasks of the user. And in the uncompleted total, we're gonna save the total number of uncompleted tasks of the user. A single record of this table relates to a single record of the user info table. For example, user Astrid has 1 completed task and 2 uncompleted. And the related record in the user task stat table is gonna be like completed total 1, uncompleted total for user Astrid. To connect these two tables, we're gonna add, I think you can guess already what. Yes, we are gonna add a foreign key column here inside of the user task stat table. We already know how to add this reference column using pgadmin. We're going to call this foreign key column user_ID, and inside of this column we're going to store the ID of the user that this particular record belongs to. We're also gonna make this column unique, unlike the foreign key that we use to set up one-to-many relationship. You know, there is another strategy. You could declare the user ID column to be both the primary key and a foreign key and not add the ID column that we are using here as a primary key. This is a good strategy for extension tables that are used to avoid putting nullable columns in the main table. But let's keep it as it is. Now let's open up pgadmin and add user task stat table. We go here in the tables, create table. Okay, we're gonna call it user task stat. And then we're gonna go to the column section and we're gonna click 1, 2, 3, 4, because we know that we're gonna add 4 columns here. The first one we said is gonna be ID, and it is like always, we are defining big int, and it is not null and primary key. The second one we said completed total, and it is again big int. This column can be nullable. And then the next one is uncompleted total. Again, it is big int. This one is also nullable. And the last one is user_ID that we're going to use as a foreign key to the user table's ID. Big int. Cool. And now the next step is defining the foreign key. We go to the constraints. We go now to the foreign key section. Click here. We usually don't define the name because we leave pgadmin to generate one for us. And now we will click an edit row, and like we have done it before, we go to the column section. We're going to select this user ID. We'll reference to user info tables ID. Cool. Gonna add it and save. Great. Now you can see this new table called user task stat with 4 columns and 2 constraints. One is primary key and the other one is a foreign key. So we will look deeper when we start adding the data in these tables, but for now you know that we have just created one-to-one relationship. Or one more thing, we said that we're going to make this user ID unique to make it one-to-one relationship. So we're going to click here on the constraint, we go to the unique constraint and go to the definition, gonna select this user ID column and save. Great. Now this user ID column that is a foreign key is unique. Okay, in general, this kind of relationship is not used a lot because most of the time information that related to this manner would be stored in one table. But you might use one-to-one relationship to take the following actions, like isolate part of a table for security reason, store information that applies only to a subset of the main table. The subset of the main table, in our case, let's say user task stat, is a subset of the main table that is a user info table. Or divide a table with multiple columns. You know that if we had a user info table that has a lot of columns, we could divide that by using the one-to-one relationship like we did, no? And the next one is save data that is short-lived and could be easily deleted by deleting the table. I think we're done with one-to-one relationship. Let's talk now about many-to-many relationship. A many-to-many relationship exists between two tables if for one record of one table, there are maybe multiple records in another table, and vice versa. This is a slightly trickier than one-to-one, but I'm sure you can still understand this as we're going to give some more examples and when we start implementing them inside of our database. Let me give you a couple of examples before touching our to-do list database. Let's see the relationship between students and courses. Say, at the college there are many students, and all these students go to a variety of different courses over the span of the day or a week. Likewise, each of those courses can have many attendant students. So we would say that a student can attend multiple or many courses, and a course can be for many students. That's why we would call this many-to-many relationship. We're going to see the implementation of the many-to-many in a second. Let me give you one more example. The second example is about bookstore. Say we are creating an online bookstore. A user on the website can buy or check out multiple books, and one book can be checked out by multiple users. I think you understand this relationship. Now let's talk about its implementation. Let's see first the relationship between students and courses, and let's try to set up this many-to-many relationship between these two tables. What we need to set up one-to-many or one-to-one relationships between tables is we added a foreign key on one table and reference to the primary key of the second table. We had kind of a direct connection. However, with many-to-many it is different. There isn't a way to implement a many-to-many relationship between two tables directly. We need to use kind of a bridge table or join table. I mean, we break apart the many-to-many relationship into two one-to-many relationships using a third. We call it sometimes cross-reference or join table. This table, I mean the join table, holds the relationship between the two tables by having two foreign keys, each of which references to the primary key of one of the tables for each we want to create this relationship. Let's take a look at the first example. We already have our student and course tables, so we just need to create the join table. And we're going to call it student course table. The join table is going to contain all foreign keys. Here, the student underscore ID column in student course table references to the ID column in the student table. And the course underscore ID column references to the ID of course table. Each row of the student course table uses these two foreign keys to create an association between rows of students and courses. We can see in the first row of student course table, the student with an ID of 1 is associated with the course with an ID of 2. On the second row, the same student is also associated with the course with an ID of 2. In the third row, a different user with an ID of 2 is associated with the same course from the previous row. So we can see that the ID value of 1 from the student table for Harris appears twice in the student underscore ID column of student course, but alongside different values for course ID 1 and 2. This satisfies a student can attend many courses part of the relationship. Similarly, we can see that ID value of 2 from the course table for Java programming appears twice in the course underscore ID column of student course table, alongside different values for student ID 1 and 2. And this satisfies the a course can be attended by many students part of the relationship. As I mentioned a minute ago, we can think of a many-to-many relationship as combining two one-to-many relationships. Here you also see the primary key, but it is up to you whether you want to keep the primary key in the student course table. We add it because all of our tables have primary keys. You could even remove it and mark both columns of the foreign keys as a primary key. But this topic is not that important for now. We are focusing on many-to-many relationships. Now, when you understood how we can implement many-to-many relationship, we're going to move to the second example. You can implement the join table by your own here and share it with us in the comments of the video below. Now we're going to see another real-world example, but this time inside of our database. We are going to add a simple role management feature. Say we want some users to be admin. For example, you are going to be admin of the app. Admin is going to have more privilege and can have access to some feature that others can't. Other users, for example, can have a simple user role and can only use whatever priorities and categories that you give. Or users can have an editor role that allows them to add their own priorities and categories. For now, we have these three roles, but we can add more as we go if needed. So we already have a table user info where we store the users of our application. Let's add a new table and call it role info. And this table contains three columns. ID, that is going to be the primary key of the table. Name gonna hold role's name. Usually we write roles with capital letters. And description, where we can add a short description of the role. So we said for now we have only three roles: admin, user, and editor. One more time, a user that has only a user role can only use application with the priorities and categories that we provide. If we give the user an editor role, he can add new or edit existing priorities and categories. And the last one, a user with admin role has access to everything, even some features that others don't. And now about its implementation. We are going to add join table called user role that contains foreign keys: user ID, user underscore ID that references to the ID of the user info table, and role underscore ID that references to the ID of role table. We can also add a primary key to follow the best practice. Now let's take a look at this example quickly. In the user role table, in the first row we have user ID 1 and role ID 1. What does it mean? It means that we are assigning a role with ID 1. In our case it is admin. So we are assigning admin to the user with ID 1. In this case Astrid. So we are assigning admin role to user Astrid. The second role tells us that the user with ID 2 has a role with ID 2, that is user. And the third role tells us the user with ID 2, again Behruz, has another role, that is editor, and it is with ID 3. I think you got the idea, and we are ready to go to pgadmin and create these tables and set up the many-to-many relationship. The first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to add role info table that has three columns. Let's go to the tables, create table, and we set role info, and then go to the columns, and here 1, 2, 3. The first one is ID. It is not null in primary key. The second row is role name, and it is text, and it should be also not null. And the last one is simply description, and it is text again, but it can be null, it is not required. Cool, we save it. Now we have to create the join table. The join table, we said we're gonna call it user role. And it is going to have three columns, 1, 2, 3. The first one is ID, not null primary key. The second we said it is user underscore ID. It is big int. And the third one is role underscore ID. Now we have to create the foreign keys. Let's go to the constraints, go to the foreign key, and start adding the very first foreign key. Okay, so let's reference from user ID to user ID here, edit, and now the second one, click here, and role ID. Let's find role info table here and role info table and ID. We're gonna edit, save. Okay, let's check it out. We have 3 columns here and we have 2 foreign keys. Great. With that being said, we are done with one-to-one and many-to-many relationship. For now, we have just added all these tables and then all this relationship. But in the future, when we start adding data into these tables, we will understand better all these relationships and why we are actually setting them up. Great. See you in the next lesson.